Let's try that. It's been a while, Danny.
Yeah, man.
Danielito McMahon.
What's up, dude?
How are you, man?
Good, man. What's going on? Long time. It feels like a long time.
It's only been a week.
Shit.
It's only been a week.
Up here at high altitude, man, this time goes fast.
You got a million things you're doing according to your Twitter and your Instagram, and
but also nothing.
Yeah, but
seemingly busy, but also just hanging out.
Yeah, well, that's not such a bad thing if you're out there. It's the whole reason you're out there, right?
Totally chilling, man.
And just as a reminder to everybody, Danny is in Boulder, Colorado.
That's right. North Boulder, Colorado. And we are bracing for yet another snowstorm, Joe.
Really? Another? Well, I think I saw something like that on your Twitter. You're like getting in kind of the last ride of before the snow comes. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. It wasn't even a ride. I just took a little spin, a few miles spin over to the Rafa Boulder store, and we could chat about that. But yeah, no, there's another snowstorm moving in. I think it's one of those things that's spanning like a day or I don't know, something. We're looking at 5 to 8 inches of snow tonight, I think.
Wow.
And so it's funny. There's this theme I've picked up on. Everyone's telling me, normally it's pretty warm and you could ride right through December and January. But everyone's like, but this year, it's kind of an exception. And it's just so funny. People are almost like apologetic. So whether it's people I'm on group rides with, or Sarah and her family, or just random people, they're like, yeah, normally we don't get this much snow. So this is like the 3rd snowstorm since I've been here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all good. Who cares? I like snow, whatever. The only bummer is that the snow, the past 2 times, especially the last time, it didn't go away for like 2 weeks. Like it just started going away the last like 3 days. And that last snowstorm was like 2 weeks ago. So you get like 2, 3, 4 inches on the side streets, and it just becomes like a ice and just hard packed snow, and it just never gets quite warm enough to melt it. And so it just kind of like hangs around, and you can't like get out of your neighborhood on a bike safely. So you're kind of like half walking the bike, little hike a bike, just to like the main road. Yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, bracing for a snowstorm, and whatever. We're in Boulder, so you obviously expect some snow, but it just means a little less pedaling and maybe longer walks, maybe some hiking, and maybe hit the gym a little bit. And it is what it is.
You have plenty of riding in. It looks like from what I've seen, looks like you've managed to get a couple of group rides in, and I saw that you were hanging out with a couple of professional bicycle racers, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yes and no. But I have been, relatively speaking, for my sorry ass, getting in some decent miles, which has been super fun. So I did my very first ever group gravel ride, I should say, on Sunday. That was dope. And did a group ride the day before that, a shorter one.
That was just a road ride.
The American Flyers ride, Joe.
Is that what they call it? Do they call it the American Flyers ride?
Well, kind of casually, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably got like a more like straightforward name, like Superior Loop or something, because Superior is the suburb it kind of hits. But that's where they filmed American Flyers. There's a climb there called the Wall locally, and it's like this tough climb that you're basically doing in like crosswinds or headwinds.
I think
And it's just like this long drag.
In the movie, that's when Muzzin, was it Muzzin, right?
Something like that,
Right?
yeah.
He like up front and he was getting chased down by one of the not Kevin Costner. It was the brother of Kevin Costner's brother, right?
Something like that. It's been a while since I saw that classic movie.
I think on that, I think Kevin Costner by then had started, his he have a tumor or something in his head, and so he was standing on the sidelines with Ray Don Chong. And I know that movie too well. I think,
I was going to say, you seem to know it in detail.
Ray Don Chong was, she was pretty. Yeah, she was very famous at that. She was pretty well known at that time.
She was super cute too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I think that's when they're cheering him, David, right? Come on, David, come on.
With the field closing in fast behind them, two riders, the final two that will qualify, and the field is eating them up, coming up the wall. Struggling up the wall for the final time in this grueling hell of a run, and they're down. Oh, Jesus. One rider is back up. He's on his bike, and he's going to finish. Right with it.
Can he do that? I don't know. The nice thing about being a bigger rider, Joe, is that you're a little less susceptible. Of course, you still got to hold on and be careful. But yeah, it was a little breezy across when everyone got down fine. But it was you're in traffic too. There's some traffic, so it wasn't like a gravel road.
Those 140-pound guys were probably excited to see you on the ride.
They're like, hey, get the guy from Chicago.
I'm going to sit behind this dude all day long.
And I had fenders. I got compliments on my fenders. Yeah. And a couple of the rides were a little wet. So people were like, oh, man, it's cool you got fenders. Plus, I'm a big guy. You can drop off me. But that's assuming I'm ahead of you. That's a big assumption.
Did anybody else have fenders on their
No, man, bike? I was the only one.
You were the only guy, huh?
I don't think I saw anyone with fenders. Which is actually funny because for me, they're kind of a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. But here, like, people just ride and they just trash their bikes, and I guess they just go home and wash the hell out of everything. Danny,
it's not so much trashing the bike; it's trashing the dude behind you because you're getting that little spritz,
little
right?
Rooster tail.
Oh, you're getting that thing all day long, man. That's I know that there are some communities, and there's certainly rides where fenders are a must. Like you're not allowed on the ride unless you have fenders. Like I know of groups like that. They're all fendered up, and their bikes all are very uniform that way in the winter during the off season. I don't know that I've ever ridden in a group like that was that nice. I always rode. I always came home with a big streak down. I've been pounded all day, just trying to avoid that rooster tail all day long,
I mean, historically, I think vast majority of my rides have been with no fenders, with whether it's on my bike or other people's bikes. We all know ass savers, they came about, and all of a sudden ass savers became like a big thing. You know what ass savers are, right?
Yeah, so those
little plasticky things you like jam under your saddle.
Yeah, I charge $12 for them at the bike.
Yeah, okay, so you got them. Okay, I just want to make sure because some people are like, "Al savers, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was Saturday's ride. It was nice, and we ended up back at the shop. The big ride was kind of like Sunday, I guess. So it's an interesting thing. So it's known as the Super Training Series. And super training, one word. And it's what I understand is it's once a month, and it's not tied to any shop per se. It's run by a handful of cats, including Ben Delaney, who we've talked about before, cycling guy, who has the YouTube channel, The Ride with Ben Delaney, and a couple other cats, including, I think, Think Gravel It's Friday, I think is their name. You can find them on Instagram.
Think Gravel It's Friday.
Yeah, I think that's their name, unless I'm botching it. TGIF. So they run it, and they have like some relationship, formal or informal, with the Subaru dealership about 2 miles from the Airbnb here. So it's the Flatiron Subaru dealership. And, Subarus here, Joe and Boulder, are just like, it's like Teslas in California. They're just Subarus.
Yeah, you get one if
everywhere.
you buy a house there, right?
Yes.
It's part of
when you get your driver's license, they just point you to the Subaru dealership.
Everybody gets one.
I mean, it's insane. But anyway, so they run the ride out of there, and basically they get there in the morning. I think the dealerships close that day anyway, on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But they open up the kind of the doors, so it's the big garage, whatever. And so they had it set up in there. I think I heard there were 200 riders who came out for this. So really big. 200 riders. Wow. Yeah. I heard anywhere from 150 to 200, and I think it was easily 150.
And you said this is a monthly ride?
It's a monthly training series known as Super Training.
Wow.
And so it's run by a handful of these cats. They kind of organize it. And I think basically the idea is everyone pays $20 and it goes to charity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a children's charity of some sort, if I'm not mistaken. And what you get for your $20 is obviously this like cool ride with these like custom routes, like really cool, interesting, challenging routes, and food at the start and at the finish. They have like beer, pizza, and all this stuff. And just like, for a really good cause, obviously they auction off a really nice set of wheels and this sort of thing. But it was damn impressive, Joe. Like
really?
we've talked about, Boulder obviously being kind of a cycling mecca. But it was damn impressive. If I had any doubts that cycling was maybe waning a little bit here, like hell no.
Yeah.
that ride was like, oh my God. So these dudes there's like local pros, high level elite amateurs. And Alex Howes showed up. He was incognito because he's no longer with EF Education. So he basically retired. He was the most like incognito. He just looked like he didn't even look like a fast rider. He just looked like a dude. He just had this like kind of baggy jacket on and just like all black tights. And like he had like mismatched water bottles. He was riding like a cyclocross bike, but he didn't look like fast per se, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like everyone knows that's fucking Alex Howes, World Tour de France finisher, former US road champ, etc. So it was cool. It lended, some cachet, although he was keeping a super low profile. So he wasn't like talking or doing anything. He was just like chilling out with some dudes. So I think people more or less left him alone. But I think a lot of people who ride around here kind of know who he is anyway.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And it was really cool. It was about 45 miles all told. And it hit roads. They were about half and half. So half paved, half dirt roads or gravel. Gravel here, by the way, again, I don't know a lot about gravel, but they call it champagne gravel here. So it's not like real gravel. It's nothing thick, nothing gnarly. It's basically hard packed dirt. And there's a little bit of actual gravel on some of the turns that we did. Like I was putting a foot out, like the old cyclocross habit, just because I'm riding 32 slicks on my Domane. So I wasn't like, totally into the gravel gear wise, but it's just like dirt roads, and there's like little climbs and stuff, like rollers and stuff. So that's what we did. And I wanted to do the more challenging one mainly for the distance, because the shorter one was only like 20 miles or something like that. So I was like, it's not long enough. I want to do a good ride. So super fun group. There were some like pretty fast riders, and then there were like folks like me kind of like just keeping up and hanging out at the back. I think we were riding for periods of like 5 to 10 minutes without seeing a single car, maybe even like 15, 20 minutes. So yeah, it felt like you were like in the country, and you always have the Rockies in the background, which is kind of cool.
And so how many miles was did that ride end up being?
Well, I think I did about 50 on the day, but that was riding to and from the dealership, which was about 2-3 miles away. So I think it was like a 45-mile ride, give or take. The gravel one that I did.
Gotcha.
And then the shorter one, I think it was like 20 or 25. It was cool. It was cool. It was really fun. A whole mix of people. There were guys and gals. There were older folks, younger folks. There were folks who had, really nice gear. And then there were folks who just had really kind of more like basic bikes. And
it sounds like that ride pulls, for there to be that many people, it sounds like it pulls people from the, from the region more so than just from Boulder. I would think that people, it sounds like something that people drive in for once a month, right? It's like kind of an event.
Exactly. And, because it is well run and they have, they use Ride with GPS, the map GPS navigation app. If people don't know it, it's pretty cool. Has it's like more powerful than like a Strava kind of thing, I think. So there are no questions. So you basically show up, you're just like ready to ride. And
wow, it sounds like a rave back in the day, Danny. You show up.
You don't find out till day of.
Yeah, you get instructions. You got to show up at this hour. And,
go to Clark and Belmont, the Dunkin' Donuts.
There'll be somebody there.
Tony.
They're going to give you a handwritten note, and
if you see any cops, don't be saying nothing.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So it was super cool, like how well it was run.
Cool.
And like I said, they had like something for everyone. So
I would have been disappointed had I heard it was, not run right. Boulder. I have high expectations of Boulder, of a place like that.
It was super cool, super well run. And, it's just these little details I love about riding around here.
Hello, I'm Katie Lonke. You're listening to the Bills Shop Society podcast.
I met Ryan Worthy. He's got this like white shock of like hair that pops out, and he's old school. He wears like what we would call vintage cycling, old like Mape, Colnago kind of jackets and stuff but of course they're not for him. That's just what he's always worn, so he still wears it.
Yeah.
And he never wears a helmet. He rides like kind of a vintage bike.
Where do you know him from? Where is he an old friend of? From?
I just know him from the industry. I was thinking about this. So I think I first met him when I worked for Bicycling as a web editor in 2010. So basically, sorry, I'm just pulling up this VeloNews profile from 2012. I'll just drop it here in this chat and people can check it out if they want. Maybe we could put it in the show notes. So the Mr. Ubiquitous Brian Worthy, which is a perfect title because he is everywhere. So he's got like this, he represents a couple brands right now. Don't ask me which ones. But he's had, he's kind of just known as an eccentric. I would say he just shows up in various places. He knows everybody in the cycling world, especially North America. I think he bounces over to Europe and back a lot, and he just kind of knows everybody. And I think he's just done like a lot of PR, and I think he's been like the rep for various brands in North America, and those have like changed over time. But he's like the coolest, like fun guy.
Oh, he owned Vermark, so that's the clothing brand. Okay.
Yeah. I saw him at the Intelligentsia Cup downtown Chicago like a few years ago. He was just like walking down the street. I'm like, Brian Worthy. So there's kind of a hashtag called Worthy Sighting on Instagram. And so whenever people meet him, they'll like take a selfie with him and tag it like Worthy Sighting. And it's just like this fun thing. And I saw him here. He just rolled up and I'm like, of course, Brian Worthy's here. And like, older at the super training. So he jumped into the casual gravel ride and we got to chat for a while. So he's just a kind of a cool guy. And then who else? I saw Ben Delaney and I saw Chris Case, who's a former VeloNews editor who I think used to edit me, or I would send him my stories when I was a stringer for VeloNews back in the day on the East Coast, when I would cover like the Harlem Crit and all these cross races on the Eastern Seaboard. I saw Fred Dreyer, who is a former 5-year editor-in-chief of Velo News, who now works at Outside. And he's done like kind of everything in the game too. So just saw like a ton of like cycling people I hadn't seen in a while, and yeah, it was really cool. So
it's good to catch up with everybody there, huh?
Super fun event. But it's been cool. So the group rides are great around here. It's just so cool. Like, I don't know, group rides back in the day, I would do them with my teams if I was racing, but a lot of times I would kind of not do them because I always felt there was kind of a, sorry to say, but kind of a douche factor, like an attitude factor with some group rides. Like people were just trying to go faster than everyone. And I don't know, it just felt like, don't half wheel me and follow your pace line. And, it was like, it just wasn't cool. Mm-hmm. And so it was really refreshing to jump on these. And everyone was just like, you can hang at the back, you could go to the front. Everyone's like social and fun. And everyone kind of waits, at certain places.
It's that casual riding that's been so difficult to transition to after being a bicycle racer. It's like, it's not one of those, like you said, it's one of those things that you just didn't do very much of when you were racing bikes. In fact, a lot of your riding when you're racing bikes is all by yourself, maybe a friend, maybe a training partner or somebody you rode with, but those when there's serious bike racing training going on, those groups are never very big. They're usually pretty small group.
Yep.
You're lucky
because the training is so specialized.
Yeah, it's just easier to get work done, I think, when you're.
It is, because you don't have to communicate and explain, and everyone's got a little something different. Like, I want to do my intervals. This guy wants to work on sprints. This guy wants to do something else, and you're right.
Yeah, that's how I knew it was a casual ride, because when the pro shows up, on a big group ride, it's like, oh, it's his day off or whatever it is, right? And it must be a fun ride.
Yeah, he just wants to socialize and like meet people. He's been like alone too long or something.
Yeah, those guys never ride with people. Unless you're a very trusted friend or something. You don't get an invite to ride with a professional bike racer very often.
You're right. You're 100% right. I always found that really funny, and I'm not trying to name drop here, but I remember when I first moved to Nice, like I was just like so like wide eyed and starstruck. Like, but it's funny you said that because I would see these quote unquote random pros riding around solo, and I was like, I'd see like Peter Luttenberger, who rode for Once, and I would see him like all the time. I'd see him like multiple times a week on the coast road. And I was always like, I'd go home, I'd look him up, and I'm like, oh, that's Peter Luttenberger. And I'm like, he's just always riding alone. Like, doesn't he have any friends? But now I'm like, well, duh, because he was doing very specific training.
Yeah.
And then I would see, one time I saw Lance, I think he was with, who was that climber guy, his buddy? Not Tyler Hamilton, but anyway, this one other dude, they would ride maybe together, but I saw Julik riding solo all the time, just like all these guys. But that's just kind of what they did, because it made more sense, because you're doing very specific, especially with power meters, when those became popular, and coaching became like everyone, people didn't always have coaches, and all of a sudden everyone had like their own coach.
Oh yeah.
So it was like, I got to do my rides, I got to do my intervals, and all those kind of stuff.
Yeah, they all had very specific work to accomplish, and I mean, I lived in a town that I was friends with a lot of them. So, when you would hear that when you were allowed to come on a ride, you knew that it wasn't a serious day for them. But the rest of the time, like you said, you'd cross them, you'd see them out on the road coming the other direction, and just, it was just a wave, and they were by themselves. They could be riding with 20 people if they wanted to, but they were just out there on their own, taking care of work. So,
oh, by the way, the rider I was thinking of was Kevin Livingston, his climbing buddy.
Very cool. Sounds like you're getting out there into the community and getting the lay of the land, and meeting old friends. That's always fun.
I've met so many people, Joe. It's honestly, I'm like trying to keep track, because I forget names like almost instantly. I'm a face guy, but it's been super, super cool. Kind of, it's not like I was shocked by it, but I was just like pleasantly surprised at how friendly and chill everyone was. And I think when you have a high level fitness kind of community that you have here, like I think it's very just relaxing, because I don't feel like people are trying to show each other up. Like it's just like, hey man, we want to hit this climb hard. If anyone gets dropped, like let's just meet at the stop sign like a mile later, and like people are just chilling, eating like a snack, and hey, you're rolling, hey, this is fun, you know.
I think having a couple of pros there, you know, or guys, potential pros showing up on the ride, you know, it puts everything in its place. Because when you have a guy that's, you know, that you see in the Tour de France, you know, there's like, you know, I don't care how fast Johnny Bello is, he's not gonna, you know, he's not gonna be as fast as the guy in the Tour de France. You know, I don't care how much bike and how much kit you have.
Yeah,
you know, there's the guy from the Tour de France is here, so you know, slow your ride a little bit, you know. And,
yeah, I mean, he could literally ride on the front the entire ride.
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. There's nobody to show up for here, you know.
Yeah. So super cool. I wish you could jump out here. We'll have to come out. Maybe we'll come out here for a trip sometime, and we could join in some of these rides. But it's definitely a cool experience to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been super fun. So we'll take this snowstorm in stride, and hopefully do some group rides at the weekend, because I found them to be super fun. So good times, man.
You probably need the rest.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't hurt to take a few days off the bike a little, you know.
Well, you know what's funny is I was looking at my, you know, Strava tells you, and I was like, oh, I think I did like 120 miles last week or something, but you know, which isn't that much, because in Chicago I would knock out 200, 250 when I was riding a lot, like pretty easily, like without too much trying. But it's the quality of the miles, of course. Sure. Fun stuff, Joe.
Very cool. You know, I saw that you made it to the pros closet, right?
Oh my God, what a story.
Yeah, I had, you know, somebody was in the store the other day, a listener, one of our regular listeners, and he's like, we didn't get that report from the pros closet. I was waiting, you know, all show long for the pros closet.
Sorry, my bad.
Shout out to Malicio.
Malicio, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, I told him it was coming, that, you know, you had things, you were doing some running around and hadn't had a chance to visit there yet, but I saw that you did hit there, and you know, how was it? It looks gigantic.
So my original idea was to bring my bike there, because I thought that's what you did when you were like in the area.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you just bring the bike in, because normally you ship it, but I wasn't super familiar with their model. So what you actually do is you take a couple photos of your bike and you submit that, and you do that online, whether you're local or not. And then based on the photos, they'll decide if they proceed. If they proceed, they'll have you ship the bike in. Well, they give you an offer. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, we'll give you $3,000, $5,000, whatever for that bike, just by kind of eyeing it, which is interesting. And then you ship it in, or if you're local, you just like walk it in, and then they do their like 110-point inspection or whatever it is, to verify everything. And then you can proceed. Excuse me. My experience was kind of funny, a little bit disappointing, actually. So I finally drove out there. It's about 15 minutes from here. So it's in a neighborhood. It's in a suburb called Louisville. Mm-hmm. And that's just one of the many suburbs, you know, between like Boulder and Denver. So it's in this like industrial park. I think it's called the Colorado Tech Center or something like that. And I think that's where... who just bought Perlizumi? Was that Specialized?
Specialized, yeah. Big rumor that they might be moving out there.
So I think it's official now, or at least the Perlizumi part. But that's where the offices are going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk that Specialized might be relocating to that,
which is great, which is crazy. But So anyway, so I had yesterday off for MLK, and Sarah was working, so I just ran a couple errands, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to finally check out Pros Closet. So I drove out there, and it's a big place, and so parking lot was like almost empty. I think it was just employee cars. So I got in there, and I was like the only customer. They have it's just like a big warehouse. So it's like a giant warehouse space. I posted that little short clip on my Instagram, but it's you walk in and there's just like this huge space, and there were a couple of folks at the desk. They were very friendly, and I just was like, hey, I'm like visiting, and I was around, and I was curious to check out the place, and we chatted with them for a second. But they've got about, let's say 30, 40 bikes built up there, like as you would see in a regular bike shop, kind of in the racks.
Available for sale? Like you can buy those off the rack? Okay.
Yep. They're just hanging there just as like any bike shop. And it's a whole variety of bikes. I think all of them were like pre-owned secondhand bikes. Maybe there were a couple of new ones because they do sell some new bikes, but I think vast majority are used bikes. And it was a whole variety. There was like mountain bikes, road bikes, gravel bikes, a whole variety for men, women, like different sizes, quirky brands and popular brands, whatever. So it was a nice little selection. I was just kind of looking through those. And then they had just like some brand new stuff for sale, like just like Wahoo, tickers, like the HR straps, HR devices, and just like little things like that. They had I think they had a Wahoo computer display and that sort of thing. And then, that's like the commercial, like customer area there. And then they have like a couple couches with iPads set up. And so you could sit there and go through basically what you would see on the website. It's the same thing. And so you can scroll through, find a bike, and then you just kind of click a button, and then they build the bike and bring it up to you.
Really?
So it's in a box, and they'll just build it within like 15 minutes. I think they're like, it's kind of like Canyon, like they're kind of almost fully built, and they just throw on like, the front wheel and like put in the stem and make a couple adjustments or something. But
so they have they keep all those bikes there, but they're all in boxes because obviously it's easier just to stack them. It's easier to put them on a shelf.
Yeah. And so if you look behind that area I was in, you just see, it's like seeing like a Costco or Home Depot, like these giant tall aisles of just bikes, and it,
ready to ship, I would imagine, because people are buying them online. So they're just, they just pull them down and ship them out. Oh, that's a good idea. I knew there was a bike shop in Chicago that kind of worked that way. A place called, it's still there, Village Cycle on Wells.
Did AJ? Yeah, AJ. Did AJ say he worked there?
Yeah, he worked there. Yeah, and they would just keep the bikes in the partially built, but in boxes because it's a lot easier to store that way. You can stack them, and built bikes take up a lot of space, but partially built bikes in a box.
You can get those ready together in a few minutes.
Yeah, they can slap them together. I guess if you want to see one, it's pretty quick.
Yeah. So and to be perfectly clear, I didn't speak with anyone about any process there. I wasn't there as a journalist. I wasn't there talking to anyone. So this is all just what I gleaned from the situation. Yeah. I think it was fairly straightforward, but I didn't call up any bikes. I kind of looked through the inventory. Again, it's the same thing you could do online from home. So I was just kind of tinkering with that a little bit. And while I was there was one other guy who came in and he test rode a really sweet looking S-Works mountain bike, Specialized S-Works. And I think he bought it. He came back with a huge smile on his face, and he had this long hair, and he was like whipping his hair around. He's like, "Oh man!" The young woman there helping him was like, "How was it?" And he's like, "Awesome."
Really?
So that was kind of cool. And so I didn't stay there super long because I didn't have my bike, and I didn't realize that process. So you basically, even if you're local, you still submit a couple photos.
Gotcha.
As opposed to like wheeling it in, which makes total sense. So what was interesting, Joe, is I came home after that, and I was going to wash my bike anyway because it was my day off, and I definitely wasn't going to ride after all the riding I did last week. So I was going to definitely rest and wash my bike up because it was pretty dirty from the gravel ride.
Mm-hmm.
So I washed it up. And then one thing led to another. I'm like, oh, I'll just take some pictures. And so then I think I told you before, I was just curious, like what their process was really like to use and also what they might offer me for my bike. So I ended up setting up a quick little account. It takes like 2 minutes. You just go on, you create a profile, you put in some really basic info. They don't ask for much. And then they just want 2 simple photos, drive side and non-drive side of your bike.
Wow.
And just a decent, well-lit kind of photo. And that's it. And then, they don't ask anything. They don't ask size. They don't have this. They don't ask that. They just like submit it. Oh yeah, please note like take a close up of anything that's like damaged or scratched or something. So I did that because I have a couple scratches on my drivetrain. And then, so I went ahead and I was like, oh, what do I got to lose? I'll just see what they're all about. So I submitted those. And then first thing this morning, when I turned on my phone, there was an email right there and it had an offer. And it's like, hey, we want to buy your bike, which I'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of interesting.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I submitted that. And, just a quick backstory, like I got this Trek Domane, which is, like an all roads bike or whatever you want to call it. So, pretty nice road bike. And I got like the mid-level one, had a problem with that. And the rear triangle was basically 1 centimeter too wide.
Mm-hmm.
And based on availability, they gave me a replacement frame, but they actually upgraded me to the SLR, which is the nicer carbon. So I had the 500 OCLV carbon, I think. And then the nicer version is the 700. Long story short, they just upgraded that, transferred all the parts over. And, it's a nice bike. It's like mint. So it's effectively a new bike. Like I don't have a ton of miles on it. I think I have like 1,500 or something, maybe. I'm thinking, this bike on the Trek website is still available. So this is the Gen 3 Domane. They just came out with the Gen 4 this past year. And on the website, the Gen 3, it still goes for like fucking crazy money. Like there are 3 versions that I saw just recently, and like there's like a $12,000 one, an $8,000 one, and stuff like that. So it's still a very high price, high end bike.
What would so yours isn't a stock build, so it's hard to compare apples to apples, right? Because do they make it with that same build?
Right, it wouldn't be the same build. Basically, what changes is you get a little nicer wheel set.
Mm-hmm.
When you go up, obviously, you get the component group goes up 1. Mm-hmm. So I have the new SRAM ETAP Rival,
mm-hmm.
and they have the Force, which I don't think is new though. I think that's still the older version. I don't think that SRAM has updated that one, if I'm not mistaken. But you do. You're right. It's not an apples to apples because the one I had like the more mid range. But then the frame was the upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, even the one I had with the frame, like if you just kind of like look at it as a whole, it would still be, more or less like a bike that's far north of like $6-7 grand.
Okay.
So getting back to Pros Closet, so I submitted the photos, got the offer,
mm-hmm.
and we talked before about Pros Closet, like it kind of feels from at least a distance kind of like a CarMax.
Yeah.
And so if people know CarMax, it's kind of they have a great model in the sense that it's very, transparent for the most part. And like you go in and they have a whole thing and they're not sitting there haggling. And they kind of just, check out your car and then they give you an offer and that's it. And it's like, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But my brother, who's like Mr. Car Guy, always said, don't sell to CarMax because they lowball you, but use that as like a benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
So like his thing was like bottom, like worst case scenario, like take what CarMax would offer you and then charge like 500 or 1,000 more. Like obviously it all depends on the car, but he's like, that's just like the basic way to go about it. So that's kind of like a CarMax. So, a lot of people kind of mention CarMax in the context of Pros Closet. And I'm like, okay, you can kind of like tell like their model, like they're going to have to kind of lowball you to like stay in business.
Sure. Yeah. Because they got to make a profit. It's a used bike already. So you're not, if that bike retails for 7,000, let's say it's in really good shape and let's say a year-old bike, because I'm thinking about myself. So it's a year-old bike, $7,000 retail. I have to make money on it. So I got to give you some money, but I still want to make some money on it. So I would say, I'd give you, my offer to you would probably be somewhere in the $3,000 price range for a $7,000 bike. Because I still have to make, I probably want to make at least $1,000, $1,500 off of that bike.
Yeah.
Maybe two. The bike is used, so they're not, the person's looking for a good deal. So maybe $2,500, $3,000.
Yeah, you were pretty close actually. So they offered me, I think, $2,400.
Okay.
Yeah, they let me pull it up. I think it was $2,400 on the nose. Oh, here we go. Daniel, we'd like to buy your item. Our team of buyers, blah blah blah. $2,415.
There you go.
So, like you start to think about the different things going on, but nonetheless, it's still.
Yeah, it's low.
I would argue it's too low. Like I was thinking realistically, they might come around 3,500, basically $1,000 more.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it from their perspective. That's why. I think the person that's selling to the pros closet is someone who just doesn't want to deal with eBay or Facebook.
Oh, totally.
Or Craigslist. So you're going to get hammered.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to.
But I still thought it would be a little bit sweeter than like 24. 24 felt like a punch in the nose. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. And to be clear, I never was thinking of selling to them because I know their model.
Sure.
And I've sold high-end bikes and done pretty well on eBay in the past. So I actually sold a car on eBay. So if I were really going to sell my bike, I would almost certainly go to eBay. But it was interesting to see what they're offering. But, the thing is, if you go on, here's the part that is kind of a wrinkle for me. So if you go on, and again, it's going to be case by case, but if you go on Pros Closet website and you search around, let's say you plug in Domane and you're looking at the Domanes, this part's a little bit interesting. So they have old bikes that are going, old Domanes, like 2018, rim brakes, mechanical. Like some of them are like mid-range. Like they're no like lower end, but there's like mid and higher range. But some of them are just mid-range bikes. They're going for like $5,000, which I don't understand that part. And I'm not talking like one, like several. So they'll have like a 2018 Domane, and it's in good shape. They do their big inspection, etc. They're asking $5,000 for some of these bikes, and I'm just sitting there like, who's going to pay $5,000 for a 2018 like mid-range road bike? Like I don't. Unless it's someone who's collecting or just loves that bike. I mean, there's a lot of these. If you click around, you see a ton of it. And that's the part I don't really get. Now, here's the other thing, Joe. What they normally have done, I believe, they give you like an option. You can take the money as a credit and just, buy something from them again, or buy something from them with that credit. They have this other option. I'm just forgetting what that is. But then they have the cash option. So the cash is just what it says. They just send you money via PayPal. What's interesting is they said, we're not doing any of those options. The only option we're doing is the credit.
Right now? Like, so if you...
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. So that to me, I was talking to this other guy today.
Yeah.
That to me just spells that the business is probably really, really hurting.
A lot of people are strapped for cash.
And I think their model is just getting slammed. And they have all these bikes.
The used bike market has, the bottom has fallen out of the used bike market because there are so many new bikes sitting around in bike shops, and everything's being discounted right now. And a place like that, I think they're, they boomed during the, during the pandemic. I must have built a dozen bikes from the Pros Closet, that people brought in bikes in boxes.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now the used bike market is in, this is a really bad time to try to sell a bike, because there's just so much stuff out. There's brand new stuff going for cost. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of bike shops with stuff up on eBay just trying to get a little cash flow over the winter, and I haven't done a deep dive into that, but knowing bike shops the way I know them, there's probably some people out there just trying to pay the rent and get to the season.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel for that. I feel for them. So they say, oh, by the way, the third option I was thinking of was this Trade Up, this company or service called Trade Up. Mm-hmm. So you get like a Trade Up voucher. But they do have a note here that says, thanks for submitting your bike. We are no longer making cash or Trade Up voucher offers on every bike submitted to us. This offer is for TPC, the Pros Closet store credits.
Wow.
And it goes on with some details. But that to me was actually that was like the most compelling part of this whole thing was like, and I know they've gotten millions of dollars, in different rounds of funding in the past. But, clearly, like you said, like the industry is screwed right now.
Wow, that's an interesting thing. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. I haven't really seen anything out there in the press about that. I know in the last week there was a lot of talk about Strava, and we talked about it here first, right? Or maybe
that's right. Breaking news. Reporting.
We broke that news. But I haven't heard anybody talk about that. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. Like first of all, man. I'm not surprised by what they offered you so much as that they're not giving you cash, or they're just giving you a credit. So
it reminds me of the secondhand shops I go to in Chicago.
Yeah,
they'll give you credit instead of cash. I'm like, okay, there's an article. Sorry, from Bicycle Retail. This is 2 years ago, May 21.
Mm-hmm.
Pros Closet receives $40 million in funding.
Oh.
Plans include growing workforce, potentially expanding presence outside Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
They had a Series B funding of $40 million. I don't know what their valuation was at the time. It raised $12 million the year before, and 2 years before that, 4.5.
Man, that was the time to cash out if you had a bike business in 21.
Yeah.
That was a good year. I was screaming it to people. I'm like, man, if you got a this is the time to sell a bike company, because the average person was walking into the bike shop those years, that 20 and 21, and they were just like, wow, this is crazy. Oh, you guys are doing great business. Everybody just assumed everybody's in the bike business was getting rich. And people, the books for a lot of bike companies were probably looking great, that year, those couple of years, the books probably looked fantastic, and people were, companies were able to get some investment, kind of like the Pros Closet. But now, now the reality of the bike industry is starting to hit everybody. It's like people that weren't very familiar with how the bike industry works they're like, what happened? I thought you said this was going to go on forever, and man, it's
So Crunchbase,
mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with, they just kind of do financials for companies. So even though they're not public, they've had $68 million in funding to date.
Wow, $68 million.
Yeah, over 3 or 4 rounds, including that one in May, that's Series B, and then financials as of this is 2020, so 2 years ago, but they were valued at up to $100 million. As of 2020, but obviously that's changed dramatically. So it doesn't have any more recent stuff here. It's just crazy because I love the model in a way, and I think they do like a really fun job. Like I love their YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
They have a couple guys there who worked at Vela News. Like they know how to do like some content. So there's stuff I like about them, but like I said, I was never 100% serious going to sell my bike to them, but I was really like thinking, okay, this money they're offering me doesn't make sense. And then to find out that they're not even giving cash, was like the nail in the coffin. I'm like, oh boy. So now I'm just wondering, like, what's going on with these folks?
I mean, they were involved in some of those layoffs recently, right? And I think they cut like 15%.
I thought they were. I'd have to double check, but I thought they were.
Yeah, back in October they cut like 15% of their work staff. So in the used car market, it's the same thing. The wholesale price of used cars has been dropping every month, and places like CarMax and Carvana and places that paid a lot of money for this inventory back. In the midst of the pandemic, are now sitting on all this inventory that they bought high, because they bought it high, and every day that it's losing, it's losing value every day, and especially with the way that the bike market is right now, with the new bike market and all this new product showing up, there's going to be less and less need for some of those used bikes. So the prices, I would keep an eye on that, because I bet you're going to be able to pick up a pretty good deal soon.
A lot of companies are hurting. A lot of companies in the bike industry are hurting. It's not just pros cause that we're not picking on them, but if anything, I'm just like very curious about their model. And it's one of these companies, like, I want to succeed, even though I personally probably couldn't imagine either selling or buying a bike from them, paradoxically. Yeah. So it's just kind of an interesting thing.
When the pros closet came about, it was an interesting concept, and it was worked. I think it worked well as kind of this small thing that was happening out there. There was a niche. They served a good niche, and I haven't paid too much attention to the company, but I did notice that they were getting a lot of money, and I always wondered in the back of my head, I'm like, man, this is that, like, I don't I don't see how that I don't see that market being that big. Very few things in the bike industry that are, $100 million entities like that I would think is going to generate a real return on investment.
How much of a market is there for like used high-end bikes? Like, even mid-range. Like, I think people are going to kind of go to their bike shop. Yeah. Maybe they'll go to now you have direct sales. That's probably killing them too. I don't know. You can imagine like how many challenges there are.
I hope they make it. I hope they come through. Their story was pretty cool. I was looking at it, and it was I thought I remember hearing the story. It was like a guy in the back of his car, like parting out bikes and selling them on eBay. That's how that's how it started,
Yeah.
And good for him. He's been able to turn it into something, but boy, right now it seems like a tough place to be. I hope they can weather the storm.
Yeah. A challenging model.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll really see after this summer, I think, who's left standing. Who's left standing? I think there's as of late, I've seen a lot of it's become widely known that there's some turmoil in the bike industry, and I think we've been talking about that here for a year. Like, we've been announcing that it's all the challenges that are coming in the bike world. And but like now I hear vloggers and bloggers, and there's YouTube channels that are talking about
joggers.
They're warning people about what's coming, and
everyone's a recession expert all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, yeah. Any guy with a camera and a YouTube channel is now talking.
Let me tell you what's coming, guys.
This my
I'm sorry. What's your expertise?
My prediction for 2023 in the bike industry. I'm like, oh yeah, no. So I'm like, I mean, at this point, I'm just tired. I'm done with crying about the bike industry. I just like, let's get on with it already.
Even the experts get it wrong, so it's like, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is clear. It is pretty clear right now that there is some trouble in talking with industry people, and in some of these meetings, there's a lot of acceptance already to what's happening, because there's no turning back. The warning signs have been there for a long time. The people within the industry have been talking about it and predicting it for a long time. I mean, if you listen to the show a year ago, we were talking about these issues. And if you haven't figured it out now, and you're turning to YouTube right now to figure out what to do, you're probably in trouble. So the season is upon us. And I mean, it's January, but the bike season's It is right around the corner, so we'll see.
Yeah, and it's it's such a tricky time, and there are so many things we don't know about Pros Closet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience going through that. Needless to say, I won't be selling my bike, at least not to Pros Closet. But it was interesting. But it was interesting to check out the process a little bit.
Yeah,
it was kind of fun to go into the shop. I did buy a T-shirt, Joe.
Pros Closet T-shirt, or
so they did a collab, Joe. They did a collab with John Watson, who is better known as the Radavist. We've talked about him.
Uh-huh.
So they have a dope little T-shirt. He did a collab with them. So they have water bottles, and T-shirts, and maybe like hats and stuff. So I saw like a green that I really liked, and it was just a simple T-shirt. Has a little logo on the breast, and on the back it says the Radavist with this cool little whatever animal logo they use. I don't know if it's a real one or one they made up, but it's the logo on his website. So I grabbed one of those, and it's a really nice quality tee. So I'm very happy with that. It was fun to go, and I'm glad I got to see it.
Thanks for listening to the Bike Shop Society podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at mail@bikeshopsociety.com. If you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you can look us up at Bike Shop Society. That's it. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Now, back to the show. Goodbye.
So, in other news, Joe.
Yes. Hold on a second. Are you doing news? Are we opening?
No, we're not. We're not there yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet.
You say news, Danny. I get it really excited.
Man, I got you.
Yeah.
Sorry to get you all excited there, Joe. I like how you jumped up.
Like, whoa.
But no, this is non-news, but news to me. So we gave much fanfare to the idea that I lost my hood to my Rafa jacket.
Yeah.
So I got a hood, man.
Awesome. What is it? I saw some photos. I saw you non-hood and then a hood, like I think you named him a magician, somebody.
Yeah, Rene Herrera. So he's the guy I met at the Rafa Boulder store who I raced with back in the day in New York City. So when I dropped into Boulder, I went in there, and we talked about that last time. And so, it was like reunion. I was like, Renee, hey, how's it going? Long time. And I didn't even know it was here. He didn't know I was here. So anyway, I have been in 1 or 2 times since then. And I just kind of casually mentioned to him, I was like, do you guys, because I think he's the manager there or something like that. And I was just like, he might know like someone who has like a hood lying around, or maybe where they make this stuff, there's a box of hoods somewhere or something, and I could just score one. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't think so. And then he DM'd me today, and he's like, hey man, I found a hood for you.
Whoa.
So I was super stoked and thankful and grateful. And so it's a black one. My jacket's blue, but it actually goes with it pretty well. So I was very stoked to have it, and I went and had a cup of coffee there today and a scone, and I got my hood, and we had a little chance to catch up. So it was cool to see Renee. Where did he find the hood? So this is actually good. So he knows a guy. I don't know who the guy is, but he knows this guy who has, the black version of my blue jacket. So the kind of rough, puffy, whatever. What he did, apparently, according to Renee, was he cut the sleeves off the jacket. And Renee was like, hey man, you cut the sleeves off your Rafa jacket. Would you by chance not need that hood anymore? And the guy's like, sure, you can have it. So he gave it to Renee, and Renee gave it to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, he was really that's looking out for you. That's looking out for a friend.
Huge.
That's huge. That's huge, because he didn't have to go that far. Like, I mean, he not only remembered that you needed a hood, but he knew a guy, who had done something really dumb. like cut up a really expensive jacket.
I know.
Like this guy won't need his hood. He cut his sleeves off. Yeah.
No, exactly. So shout out to Renee. Thanks. That's why I call him the magician.
Yeah, that's very nice.
So no, it's super cool. And so I got my hood, so I'm happy. And it was actually funny because I rode there without a hat thinking, okay, I'm getting my hood. So I did get the hood, and then on the way home, I needed it. It was actually the temperature dropped because that snowstorm's coming. And I put up the hood, and it fits my big old head, and I'm happy as a pig in shit.
Very nice. Good for you, man. Congratulations. That's a score.
So that's my news, non-news.
That's quite a week. it's quite a week you've had. You've had group rides. You've met new friends. You got a
and I went to the rodeo.
And you went to a rodeo somewhere in there. Yeah.
So the rodeo was crazy. I'll just tell you briefly about the rodeo, but I'd never been to a rodeo, and it was very interesting. I don't know if I need to go to another one ever again, but it was very interesting, and it was the stock show. So it's a bunch of cowboys, and it's a lot of cattle, it's a lot of horses, and then they have it's like a trade show. They have a whole they have different buildings for it. It's huge, and that day was that super nice day I mentioned. It was like reaching 60, so it was super nice out. So that meant a lot of people were out in the middle kind of area, and there was like food vendors and people drinking and all this kind of stuff. And then the highlight was like the actual rodeo in one of the kind of stadiums, whatever. So we went in for that, and it was interesting, Joe. I'd never been to a rodeo. I've only seen them in movies, and it was interesting. It was well done in the sense that everything was like super organized. It's a really professional show. And they have these like real live cowboys, and they go through a whole series of things. They're like, they're riding the bulls.
Yeah.
It's like a whole, they have to go, they just do all these rounds and they test you on all these different things, but it's like legit. And there's like world champion cowboys there, which I didn't even know was a thing. So they're like riding bulls, they're bucking broncos. They're doing the barrel racing. The women did that where they race around the barrels and stuff. And then they have to, jump on the little, the steer, and they tackle the steer to the ground and rope them. And it's a whole thing. I don't know, as an animal lover, some of it was a little bit hard to watch. So that was a little bit funky. It was funny because the cowboys, when they were grabbing and trying to rope the steer, they a lot of them missed. So the idea is to you come out of the gate on your horse, they let go of the little steer, and then you try to jump on the steer and tackle it down and then rope it, and it's timed. So a fast time is 8 seconds or 5 seconds or something. But a lot of them missed. So really? I started cheering for the animals. I got some dirty looks.
Oh, you were gonna get in trouble in that crowd.
I know.
You're out west, man. You can't do that. They're gonna drag you behind the horse.
So I wasn't super loud about it, but apparently one woman kind of turned and gave me a dirty look. She was doing? All for the cowboys, and I'm like, give me a break. So I think the animals did pretty well.
Oh gee,
I stopped counting at 5 when they missed 5 little steer.
Yeah, it's tough to watch some of that stuff, and but I also enjoy a good ribeye. So
well, no, I can't be a hypocrite.
No,
so
I know.
But overall the show was really interesting, and they obviously have a lot of skill and professionalism. I did enjoy the barrel racing a lot. So they have these 3 barrels, and then the women come out. They come out blazing, and they got to ride around each of them without knocking them down, and then get back into where they started. And it was actually really, really cool. So that was pretty fun. But the whole event was interesting. I mean, it's tons of real cowboy types, and it was a nice break from the biking world. You're just in this totally other thing. So that was my other first gravel ride, first rodeo, and now I can say it's not my first rodeo if I ever go back to one. But I don't see myself running back to one, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it comes, well, I mean, in Chicago, the rodeo does come to Chicago once a year. There is.
Does it?
Yeah, out in the Allstate Arena or one of those places.
Out there. Right.
Yeah, they usually have. That's why I was asking if it was one of those traveling rodeos.
Right.
So yeah,
that's funny. Yeah. So what were you gonna say? Sorry.
No. I mean, next thing you're going to do is join 4-H, but I don't think that I think you're too old for 4-H.
I'm too old
I
for
think
4-H.
You're too old for 4-H at this point. But yeah, I mean, I know somebody. I know. Well, he's a man now, but he was a kid back when he was in 4-H, and when he told me a story about raising his prize steer, because you you get it as a young steer, and that's kind of like, that's what you do. You raise it, you raise it, you grow it,
Of course.
and, make sure it's all pretty, and I guess you brush it and, exercise it. So it's a big, big old steer. And then you take it down to, the fair and parade it around. And if you're lucky, you win. And he won. He won the competition, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's great!" Then what happens is like, then they cut it up. Then we put it in the, they cut it up and we put it in the freezer. I'm like, "Oh, like that's your." He's like, "That." I'm like, "That was your friend. That was like your pet." He's like, "Yeah, I know, but that's how that's how things go on the farm." And I'm like,
"Oh
wow,
my God!"
Man. I'm like, I could not do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. That's why there's farmers, and then there's us, Danny.
Yeah, totally.
City folk,
man. So that was fun. A lot of firsts, and that's the rodeo. So there's not a lot for news, but Joe, we can go over a couple quick things if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gives me an excuse to
to play it.
Hello, I'm Steen.
Oh, not that one. How about that one right there? There you go. Let's do that. Right now, there's people are cursing their phones right now. They're
100%.
I told these guys to stop playing this crap. They won't listen to me.
Well, hopefully people will take it with a grain of salt.
At this point, it's just all right. I think that's good.
So just a couple of quick things. This won't be a super in-depth news roundup, but some of the ones that are just jumping off the page, Joe, is that it was confirmed that Cav, as we talked about last time, Cav is officially now joining Team Astana for what could be his last pro cycling year, possibly his last Tour de France, and possibly his record-breaking Tour de France stage win. So that was announced officially since our last show, and just kind of backed up what we kind of mentioned last time. There were rumors and pictures, and he was like hanging out by some like Team Astana car. I think it was in Alicante, somewhere in Spain.
In Alicante,
somewhere.
Yeah, that was the Alicante airport. I know that.
There you go.
I know that airport because I've flown there, and I saw that. I saw the photo. I thought, my wife is there right now, and she's offered to go chase some of these guys around. She's like, oh, she's like, nice. She's like, if you tell me where they're at, maybe I'll take a drive out there, and but I'm like, do I really need to send my wife out there to snap pictures of me? There are enough people snapping photos of team cars and people riding around. And she's like, I see them all the time. I'm like, well, if you happen to be driving by them, or behind them, then take a couple of pictures, but you don't
go your way.
No, don't go take a special trip down to some hotel parking lot to meet these guys. It's okay. So
yeah. So that was that. So I mean, I'm just kind of relieved. I'm sure Cav is, and others are, that he, whatever he did to get that contract for, I believe it's 1 year. I haven't checked, but whatever it is, I think everyone's just very clear on like what the objective is. Get him to the tour, get that stage win, boom. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Something to look forward to for the tour, Joe. And then, as we kind of talked about a little bit last time, Strava has in fact raised their prices. And we talked about how this was reported in the UK. I think it was Bike Radar or someone reported it, but we weren't sure if it was going to happen with the US side. But it appears that Strava has raised their fees by 50%. DC Rainmaker has, that guy, right?
Yeah, that guy's gone deep. He did he's got a video right now on his YouTube channel about all the happenings. And
he does some crazy good deep reviews. If people don't know him, his handle is dcrainmaker.com. And he does a lot of cycling. He does some other fitness stuff too, but he does a lot of cycling stuff, and he does like these super in-depth reviews. And I think he's just very has high level of expertise with all this stuff. So if you don't know his stuff, check it out. And I'm just trying to get the gist. Did you watch the video, Joe?
Yeah.
Did you get the gist here? It looks like he's a little bit confused, like the rest of us, if this is actually happening in the U.S. We know it's happening in the U.K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gist of it was that there's a lot of confusion right now. He went back and forth trying to get answers from them. As far as like sending emails to Strava and trying to get an answer. A simple answer, right? Like how much am I paying for Strava this year? And he wasn't able after it was all said and done, he wasn't able to get an answer directly from them. But he did a little bit of just comparisons, and he was able to determine that there's just different tiers for different people depending on where you live, when you signed up for Strava. It was it's pretty convoluted. You should check out the video, and he's got some charts and a lot of data, but it's not as clear cut as like it's $79.99 a year. Lot, it has to do with when you signed up and where you're at in the world, because some places are experiencing a bump and some aren't. And I don't have all of the information, but he's got it all there. So
convoluted is the right word, Joe. Mm-hmm. He actually has this long post, and at the end he says, so let me try and simplify this for you. Here's a distilled version. And this is his interpretation or paraphrase of what he learned from Strava. And so he says, again, his words, not Strava, but he says, Strava will increase your price if you live in a random smattering of countries. However, we won't show you said new price until 30 days prior to renewal, nor will we put that price in a handy table anywhere on our website, because honestly, we wouldn't want you to know just how much we're going to increase it. Also, if today is before February 2nd, 2023, then frankly, we have no idea what your account renewal status should show, blah, 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 blah. So my takeaway from this is it's a massive failure on Strava's part to address this head on, clearly, like good, solid comms, and just be like, if you're going to raise it, like just be, come out with it. Like, what's the deal? Like, I don't think any smart people have a problem. They understand that companies have to raise prices over time. Everybody does that. Name one company that doesn't. They just do. Netflix does it. Your car dealer does it. But like, this seems like a huge PR shit show for Strava. That's my real takeaway from this.
Yeah, it has been, because we're talking about it. He's talking about, everybody's talking about it. There's been a couple of, I think a couple of podcasts or two that have mentioned it. So, I mean, it's everywhere, because I think in the bike world, a lot of people use Strava. So, a lot of people have these memberships. So it's,
it's made mainstream, Joe. TheVerge.com has a headline: Strava knows its messy price hike is confusing. is the headline.
Wow.
While this is the first price hike for the platform in over a decade, the rollout is unnecessarily, what's the word? Convoluted. Oh. You hit the nail on the head. No one likes price hikes, but Strava's messy rollout has left many customers wondering what's happening to their subscription. Here's what's actually happening. The company is raising prices for the first time in more than a decade, and the new price everyone pays depends on the region they live in, whether they are a monthly or annual subscriber, and whether they purchased their subscription prior to November 23rd, 2022. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, and they actually quote DC Rainmaker. That's funny. And then the Strava, the Reddit Strava subreddit. Anyway, so whatever. It's just so unnecessary. Like, why did this happen? Like, why would they do it like this? This is so dumb. I have no problem paying more for Strava. Yeah. It's normal. They haven't raised their prices in a million years.
It seems pretty straightforward. Like, next time you renew, this is what the price is. This is what the price is going to be, right? And everybody just has, kind of like a uniform 20% across the board or something.
Right.
I just don't understand the whole, their whole thinking with all of that, right?
I think it's just an internal shit show. Plus, they've recently laid people off. I'm just saying they're probably having a big bad week over there at Strava.
Yeah.
Yikes! Yikes!
Oh well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. In other news, Joe, the tour down under is underway, and we have our first stage winner one of my favorite riders who I have had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out a little bit with, and also seeing firsthand his favorite horse meet. Alberto Bettiol won the opening time trial at the Tour Down Under in his beautiful pink kit and his Cannondale bicycle. So the racing season has officially started, and he's the first winner of a World Tour race / stage of 2023.
Wow, they're going at it already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm stoked. I'm stoked with that. I have yet to sit down. In the past, I have watched the race live, and I think it usually coincided with like later evening Chicago time because obviously they're way into the future. I just haven't sat down here in Colorado and looked at the schedule and like when I could watch it live. But I will definitely be watching this week some of the stages live, especially like the decisive stages, like with some climbing and hilltop finishes or whatever they got going on, which they usually do. So, I'm kind of like, I think I'm ready. I'm like, had like a lot of time off, not following racing. I didn't really follow much cyclocross this year. And so I just feel like fresh and kind of genuinely excited to watch some bike racing. So, I will definitely be watching some Tour Down Under. It's an interesting race, and it's some guys get super fit for it, and they want to have like a good early season like victory under their belt and take off some of the pressure. Other guys are kind of using it as like training for the classics. So it's always, and then you have the local folks, the Aussies and the Kiwis and these other folks. Like for them, it's like certainly the biggest race of their whole season. So they're out gunning for some wins, some podiums and stuff like that. So, and it was cool to see Bettiol. I think he won a stage in the Tour last year. He won, the Tour of Flanders Classic a couple of years back. Was it 2-3 years back now? He's had just kind of like an interesting career with that big Flanders win, and then kind of like not a whole lot after, just some things here and there, some good performances. Always seems to be trying. But you know what they say, that curse when you win like a big monument and then like sometimes nothing comes after it. He's definitely had some good wins. Don't get me wrong. He won that really cool Tour stage win. I thought it was last year. It could have been the year before, but he's just a guy I really liked. He seems super likable, and I just dig his persona on social as well. He seems like just a cool, hard. He's like a real racer type. I feel like he just kind of races on instinct a lot too. So I'd love for him to have a big season. We'll see what happens. And I know he loves his horse meat, so it's always an interesting aspect too. So I'm pretty stoked. So there's this other story that's pretty much the main stuff, but Slate Magazine, which is kind of, I guess you call them mainstream or like kind of a fairly well-known news site. The headline is "The Cult of Bike Helmets: The History and Danger of a Modern Safety Obsession" by Marion Renault, and this was published yesterday. So I'm looking forward to reading this. It looks like a pretty lengthy article, and I'm just curious. I can already kind of guess like what it's going to go on about, because I know if anyone follows Bike Snob, he has a very interesting take on bike helmets. And I think his take, I hope I'm doing it justice, is if he's kidding up, he'll put on a helmet. But if he's not kidding up, like if he's just riding casual, like around the city or whatever, he lives in New York, I believe still, he doesn't wear a helmet. And he has also questioned and challenged people on when they make blanket statements like helmets, everyone should wear a helmet, like they're safer. He's always challenged people, and he's challenged me too, to show him data, because one of his takes, I believe, is people get a false sense of security by wearing a helmet. They think that they're not invincible, but that they're much more protected than they really are. I believe that's one of his arguments. Do you have any takes? Any take on helmet?
On the helmet thing, my general take on helmets is it doesn't really it's cheap insurance, and if you fall, then it's there. I don't think that's. I mean, isn't that really why we wear it. It's just it's there in case you need it, and if it helps, great. I don't think I'm reckless because I'm wearing a helmet, I because it hurts to fall whether you're wearing a helmet or not. So we tend to be pretty careful. But yeah, I mean, I'm so used to wearing it. It doesn't really, it doesn't bother me one way or another. I just wear it. I'm not a zealot. I'm not like one of those helmet Nazis. I'm not. Oh, you got to wear your helmet.
That's good, Joe.
We're not going to ride without. We're going to. You can't ride with us if you're not wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. I'm also. I guess these days, like, I don't really ride with anybody who doesn't ride with a helmet, and like I said, no one's trying to make a point or anything, just, I don't know. I just kind of, that's the group I run with these days. Everybody just kind of buckles up and goes. And I mean, I'm to the point now where if I, every once in a while I'll leave the shop and I will have forgotten my helmet, and I'll be 2 blocks away and I'll turn around and go get my helmet at this point, just because I do feel kind of weird without it, because it's been so many years of just automatically throwing one on that, it's almost second nature. It's just part of my riding. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't get a false sense of security from having it, but, and I don't ride any more reckless because I have one. So, to each his own.
I do. I do feel like, how you see those like photos, like when a pro crashes or just anyone crashes and they show their helmet like in tatters.
Yeah.
They're always like, wear your helmet, folks. Like, this could have been my head, it's just kind of interesting.
I've seen a lot of it around the shop. I mean, I think maybe subconsciously that's part of it too, that I've seen where the helmet has actually been very, could have helped. I've seen cases where it could have helped. I see cases where, it did help. It's not uncommon for someone to drop off a crashed helmet that they bought at the shop, and I'll have it up there on the shelf for 6 months or something as an example of what, try to get people to buy a helmet. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really see the downside of wearing one, or being so ardent about not wearing one. It's like, is it that big a deal these days?
I feel like you summed up my whole take as well, like pretty much to the T. Like I'm not going to like scream out at people, but I don't feel like I feel like I'm as safe with or without a helmet. I do find maybe sometimes this is like a meta thing. Like if I'm not wearing my helmet, I kind of like think about it.
Yeah.
And like that's a little distracting. So maybe that in itself is a little unsafe. If I ride or kid up, I can say 100% of the time wear a helmet. But like today, I just rode the bike path to the bike shop in my like sneakers and jeans and whatever, and I didn't wear my helmet. I probably would 7 out of 10 times for that ride, but today I just didn't. And so that's that. But I don't go too crazy if I'm riding in traffic in general. Like I'm definitely like not like I used to be. I used to maybe take more risks. I was never like super dangerous, but I definitely have had some close calls and probably had some luck on my side here and there. It's an interesting thing with the helmets. I'm wondering if our listeners have any takes on helmets. Maybe they can get in touch with us. But
drop us a line. Cool. I'm going to close the newsroom.
Close the newsroom, Joe.
All right. Hello. I'm staying. Oh, there you go.
That guy keeps coming up. Oh, but Joe,
that's Stein. Hold on, that's Stein.
Bike Shop Society podcast.
All right, there. Shut up, sign. Jeez.
Hello, I'm Stein.
Oh, jeez. Stop.
But I've been rambling a lot here. But what's up with you, man? Like, give me the download. What's going on with you and the shop and everything?
Danny. You know what? And we were talking about how the bike industry woes, and all of that. I'm tired of it already. I'm just tired of talking about how bad the blah, 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 blah. Oh, the bike industry. I'm like, all right.
It's enough.
It's enough. Now that, like, I think if you own a bicycle shop, then you have, that's part of that's one of your rights is to complain about owning a bicycle shop. Like every shop owner complains about owning a bicycle shop, but at the end of the day, we love, we love what we do. And, yes, it's going to be a challenging year. And yes, it's going to be, the bike industry. There's some companies that are having a rough time right now, but that's it, quit it. Like I think it's just over the last week or so, it's been like, it's been everywhere, like it's kind of hit critical mass, where some of these big, YouTube channels and, just people that aren't really in the bike industry. They're kind of like vloggers and bloggers and people that talk about just kind of involved in the cycling world, but not necessarily in the bike business. Are talking about it, and it's like, okay, it's it's time to just focus on the season and getting on with business. And I think in Chicago, we're used to downtimes in the bike industry. It's called winter, that's like something it's something that we've dealt with forever here, because you have 6 months on and 6 months off, and so, is it going to be a little bit tougher this year? Yeah, maybe. But I think I've talked to some friends in the business locally, and then other people in the industry, and there's a lot of people that have it together. They're tightening, they're watching things. Obviously, they're watching things a little bit closer, and sure, there's some concern, but everyone, the bulk of us are going to get through it. We're just going to get through the season. We're going to fix bikes. We're going to sell bikes. We're going to do the thing that we do, and we're going to weather this. And so I think. I'm just ready to start talking about the season and stuff, and planning for that. It's just like, come on, man, it's all right. There's just so many people crying about it, and it's like, I guess the thing is that people will probably start hearing it now, just because it's, if you listen to the show, we've talked about it a little bit, but I think I think a lot of people are going to start hearing about it now, just because where I'm seeing it pop up, like my algorithms, because it's Bike Shop Society, I'm just getting fed a lot of stuff, from from people that aren't necessarily in the bike business. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people talking about this stuff. There's a lot of people just reading, the trade magazines and stuff, and now spitting this stuff out. So it makes it sound like, oh God, every bike shop, every small bike shop in America is going to go out of business. And that's not the truth. There's going to be some that go out of business, and some of them are going out because they're selling, because they've been able to cash out. So there's a lot of, there's also a lot of businesses, a lot of these independent, these little bicycle shops that are selling to Specialized and Trek because they're cashing out, and good for them. They're able to walk away with they finally made some money in the bicycle industry,
right?
Because while they have the bike shop, they're making a living, but you cash out at the end. You finally sell the building and sell the business, and hopefully you walk away with a little nest egg. So I know there's a lot of cases like that. So not for, I see a lot of people, angry because Specialized is buying, their local bike shop or the bike shop down the street. But in some of those cases, the owner's super happy, just like the owner is happy to sell, he's excited, and it all, it works out for some of those guys. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't believe all the dire news out there. It's going to be a tricky year to navigate for a lot of people, and some brands are going to go away, but they're probably brands that weren't doing great to begin with, or it's inevitable that some are going to have to get bought out or go out of business. But as a whole, I think we're going to be fine. As far as we go, just getting ready for the season, man. I I moved a mechanic's toolbox into the bike shop this week.
Whoa.
So I don't have the mechanic yet, Danny, but I have his toolbox.
Does he know you have his toolbox?
Yes, well, I went to his house, I'm like, yes, you need help moving it? Great. I'll run over and grab it and bring it over. So one step closer to landing a new mechanic at the bike shop, and that will be very exciting for me. So we'll see. As of right now, I have his tools, so that's that's a win, and
cool,
we'll see
man.
how things go. And then on the other part is getting ready for CABDA in February. So the big CABDA show is coming to town. I think they last week they wrapped up in California. They did their West Coast show. So they do. CABDA used to be strictly Chicago's. Actually, CABDA, the Chicago Area Bicycle Dealers Association.
Right.
But then, and so there was always a local show after the Interbike show went out. There was a local CABDA show, and they've been able to take advantage of that void left in the market when Interbike went out of business, and they've hit on a good thing, which is these regional shows, not as big as Interbike, not nearly as big as Interbike, but for bike shops, it's actually these shows tend to work out better because you can actually go there and do business, and the timing of the shows is a little bit better because, for a shop in the Midwest, a show in February, well, that's about the time when you're ready to order stuff, so you can go to the show and actually order tires and order some bikes and order some accessories. So you actually go to the show and you're not just walking around and grabbing a hot dog and looking at new stuff. You're actually going there and, you're like, okay, season might be here in a month. I need some inner tubes. I need some cables. I need, give me give me a case of those bags. So it's actually you can actually get some work done there,
So it's mostly for bike shop owners, people in the industry, and they're kind of wheeling and dealing. It's not really like everyday Joes just walking around at other shows.
It's a dealer show. So I mean, even Interbike was a dealer only show. I think maybe towards their last year or two, they did open the last day up to the public. Yeah, but traditionally that was also just a dealer show. So that's where all the bike shops in the United States used to go, to see all the new stuff, and those shows started to fail when the big companies started to pull out. So when your Treks and Specialized decided that they were just going to throw a party for their own dealers, and they abandoned, Interbike, that's kind of signaled the downfall of Interbike. So, but when that went away, the CABDA thing kind of exploded, and so now they do one on the East Coast. They do one here, the Chicago one, and they do one in California. When that show hits, that the season's right around the corner. So I mean, I think it kind of gets people off their butts and gets people ordering. The time, like I said, the timing is right because the other thing about those the shows that the Interbike used to take place in the fall, September, October. Which was not a great time as a Midwest bike shop. The last thing you want to do is really order stuff there. You don't need stuff going into winter. But the way that the bike industry used to work, that's when you would write a giant pre-order for bicycles. You would book all these bikes. That the way we order bikes, the way the bike shops order bikes has kind of changed. You're not putting in these giant preseason orders for 200 or 300 bikes at a time, at that time, in September. So it's a lot more on-time ordering. And so, shows like this a show like that is really good for us.
Will you go just for one day or do you go multiple days?
I'll go for 2 days. I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the show is 2 days this year. Yeah, I mean, there's seminars. They got some. They usually have some. It's not unusual to have Shram there doing some sort of break bleed seminar, or Fox is gonna. I haven't really looked at the full agenda, but they have some. They have some seminars going on, and some of them are really interesting. Like the National Bicycle Dealers Association has some little, talks, and if you want to spend a little bit of time with some of your vendors, well, I mean, the show goes pretty fast. A day goes pretty fast, because you can be writing an order for an hour and a half, and talking to another rep for another hour. It also, there is a social aspect to it. And this year, just because some of those guys that you may not have seen for a while, it's probably going to eat up a lot of time doing that stuff. So, yeah. I guess actually I have some stuff booked. Maybe I'll talk about it next week. We'll see if it comes together. But
nice.
It has some. I hope to do like a fitting class when I'm there.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll if I can confirm that this week, then I'll talk about it a little bit next week. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be fun. And there's a morning right there. That's an entire morning. So but that's kind of exciting.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I went to I never made it to Interbike, regrettably, but I did go to Eurobike one time, and I think we talked about it on a previous show way back when. But that was a fascinating experience, because I don't know if you've ever been to Eurobike, but man, that place it's like too big. It's like it was like 5 McCormick places.
Yep.
Like, it was insane. Like, I thought there was like one part of it, and I'm like, okay. And then my buddy's like, so let's go to the next one. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, there's like 5 of these.
It was even bigger than Interbike. Yeah.
Unbelievably big. Like, is seriously exhausting. It was like going to like 5 Chicago auto shows.
Yeah. You're tired of bikes by halfway through.
And they try to make it cool and have different things. But honestly, I was kind of like, okay, I never need to go there again, because one thing that I found that was just kind of horrible was there were so many knockoff carbon wheel companies, like booths. It was kind of unbelievable. Like, I thought it was, I don't know, it was weird. Like, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of like these like knockoff carbon wheel sets, like, and everyone wanted to give you like a sample and check out our stuff. And I went to like a couple, and I was kind of being polite and chatting with these people, but then I quickly realized, oh my God, there are like, I don't know if there were hundreds, but there were dozens and dozens and dozens of these, and they're all the same. I was just like, what is going on here? At
one of the early Interbike shows that I went to, in the back of the show, like in, the back of the show floor, they'd have these pavilions, and like the Italians would have the Italian pavilion, where it was all Italian manufacturers. They would all gather. They would just be all in one space. So you'd have Colnago there, and Pinarello, and and clothing companies, but they would all be under this Italian flag, right? Like the Italian pavilion. But tucked way, way back in the corner, there was like this Taiwanese pavilion, right? And there were these blank booths, just with black and white signs with a word on it, right? Some sort of manufacturing company, and they'd have raw frames hanging on the wall, and handlebars, and these generic carbon wheels, like like you're saying, right? Yeah. And you go back there, and you could see the stuff, and nobody was attending to you. Like everybody was just they were just sitting on chairs and eating, and like you just walk around through these booths. But then you would see like these guys come in with their badges, and if you looked at their badges, you'd see like Specialized and Trek, and then those guys would get up off their chairs, and then you'd see them walk back into the they would have the little back room of the tent, and I remember lingering there and like kind of walking in and listening in on their meeting. And then you realize, oh, wait a second, these are the guys that make the frames. These guys make the frames. Oh, I get it. You know, this is where the bike companies come to talk to the manufacturers, right? These were like the guys that were making the carbon wheels and making the handlebars. And these are all like generic samples, but they, you know, and I was able to get a catalog and you know, like if I were to order 30 bikes, I could get my name on them, you know, like, you know, you could get Joe's brand of bike, right? If you just had to order a certain amount, you'd have to fill a container, you know, you can get your own bike brand.
I find those shows just kind of fun to pop and do. And it's like an interesting insight. You always meet really cool people too. And some of the people I've met at those shows, I'm still in touch with. Like, we'll connect on LinkedIn, and it's just like a nice resource. Like, you can hit them up, like, hey, I know this is random. Like when I did that big article on Canyon, which I quoted you in, you know, I hit up like random, kind of seemingly random people, but I'm like, oh yeah, I met that guy once. I wonder if he remembers me, and like we're friends on LinkedIn or whatever. And like all that comes from just like networking. So, you know, those are cool. Even though I was never like an industry guy in terms of like, you know, having my own shop or business, but even from a journalism point of view, it was good to really network with those folks. So sounds like fun. We definitely need to hear a full report, Joe, from that show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, it'd be, like I said, and you know, reconnect with some of those, some of my reps, and you know, people at the bike companies, you know, people that I'm used to talking on the phone with all year long. And, you know, sometimes those account people will make it out to the show, you know, and yeah, it should be fun. So,
awesome, Joe.
Yeah, man. It's good talking to you.
You as well, dude. It's been fun to catch up with you as always. And I feel like we're about halfway through our trip. So before you know, we'll probably be back in Chicago, but hope you're doing your Swift rides, because we didn't do it last year, Joe. I was thinking about this. We never did that ride, you and me. So
well, now I'm intimidated by you, Danny, with all these logging all these big miles.